हेलो दोस्तों, दिस इज भारत कुमार एंड यू आर वाचिंग माय चैनल निर्मल इन्फो अपडेट्स।
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left.
India holds a conventional advantage to ward off a 1962 type setback in the event of a full-scale escalation with China, primarily because of its Beijing-centric deployments across air, land and high-altitude platforms, according to a U.S. study. The research paper, published by the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at the Harvard Kennedy School earlier this year, analyzed comparative data of Indian and Chinese strategic assets. The study, however, noted New Delhi's conventional advantage remains underappreciated in the Indian discourse. The publication introduced a new data compilation based on published intelligence documents, private documents sourced from regional states, interviews with experts based in China, India, and the United States. It gave a comprehensive assessment of the location and capabilities of Chinese and Indian strategic forces. The two authors of the study are Dr. Frank O'Donnell, who is a non-resident fellow at the Stimson Center's South Asia program, and Dr. Alexander K. Belfras, a senior researcher at the Center for Security Studies at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. Conventional forces. The research estimated that India's total available army strike forces near China's border areas to be around 225,000 personnel against an estimated 230,000 Chinese ground forces under the Western Theater Command and Tibet and Xinjiang military districts. But then the study found the Chinese numbers misleading. Even in a war with India, a significant proportion of these forces will be unavailable, reserved either for Russian task-ins or for countering insurrection in Xinjiang and Tibet, it says. The authors observed that a majority of Chinese troops are located further from the Indian border, posing a striking contrast with the majority of forward-deployed Indian forces with a single China defense mission. Air capabilities. The Chinese Air Force, PLEF, according to the authors, also suffers from a numerical disparity to the Indian Air Force, IAF, in the border region. China's Western Theater Command controls all regional strike aircraft in this area, the proportion of which are needed to be reserved for Russia-centric missions, the study said. China, it added, hosts a total of around 101 fourth-generation fighters in this theater, which also include Russian defense, against around 122 Indian comparables solely directed at China. China would likely be compelled to rely more upon its rear area air bases, which will exacerbate its limited fuel and payload problems, the authors say. Most PLEF pilots are over-reliant upon ground control for tactical direction, which the study notes may turn out to be counterproductive. According to the study, the Indian fighter pilots have a level of institutional experience in actual networked combat due to ongoing conflicts with Pakistan. Although China has a superior missile force, it is unlikely to overcome the PLEF disadvantage at once. If the PLEF attacks just 3 airfields, it will require 660 ballistic missiles per day for attacking the runway and taxi track alone. China's stock of 1,000-1-200 MRBMS/SRBMS, medium, and short-range ballistic missiles, will be over in less than 2 days when attacking just 3 airfields, with no other major target systems being addressed, wrote the authors, quoting a former IAF official. The authors believe that China may permanently station large forces nearer to the border, but it will give time for a counter build-up by India. LAC standoff and intelligence failure. Frank O'Donnell, the lead author, told India Today TV that their assessment of the disposition of major Chinese and Indian combat forces has not changed since the publication in March. That said, he pointed out that such a large movement by the PLA would have been picked up by Indian and US intelligence much in advance. What has happened in this episode is that a large Chinese military exercise near the border areas was used as a feint, with Chinese forces then being diverted toward the positions they occupied today, O'Donnell said. He termed the current situation an outcome of a significant intelligence failure and suggested that there should be a Cargill Review Committee-level public inquiry as to how this intelligence failure was permitted to occur and provide recommendations for preventing or occurrence. Possible solutions. Asked about the possible solution to end the standoff, O'Donnell suggested an aggressive diplomatic strategy, similar to the New Delhi executed following the 2008 Mumbai attacks. China is intensely sensitive to its global image and how it is portrayed. The 2008 Mumbai played regular MEA briefings of scores of foreign ambassadors regarding the nature and extent of the Chinese LAC violation, and pressuring these governments to publicly criticize China for these actions and demand that it withdraw will raise the international cost to China's reputation in continuing the occupation. In his opinion, Russia should be a particular target of Indian diplomacy with regard to China. To intercede with China as its closest partner to tell it to pull back. Russia is reportedly already very distressed with the Chinese actions, O'Donnell added. The final diplomatic option, in O'Donnell's view, is the cancellation of an invitation to China for next year's BRICS summit, which India is hosting. PM Modi can publicly state that at present he cannot see how he could invite China to attend if it is occupying Indian territory, says O'Donnell. He noted that the Declam crisis ended soon before the scheduled commencement of the 2017 BRICS summit. The symbolic disengagement of Indian and Chinese armies from few areas in eastern Ladakh has shown their intent to resolve the border standoff peacefully ahead of another round of military talks on Wednesday. The gesture explains that the dialogue between the two countries was successful in China, too understood that bullying tactics will not work against India. China recently released propaganda videos to show its military preparations, and the strategy perhaps was to build a psychological pressure on India, but disengagement of its troops in eastern Ladakh today simply showed the hollowness of the Chinese army in front of India's global diplomatic might. Chinese troops had advanced on 4 positions on the line of actual control, 3 in the Galvan Valley and 1 in Pangong Lake, where the troops of both the nation were face to face. Now, from 3 places in the Galvan Valley, Chinese troops have gone back nearly 2.5 kilometers. The Chinese troops had earlier reached Finger 4 of Pangong Lake in Ladakh and confronted the Indian soldiers. Indian and Chinese troops have been engaged since May 5 following a violent clash in Pangong Tso. Even if the disengagement of Chinese troops is being considered a moral victory of India, some people in the country tried to undermine a spirited nation just to nourish their political career. Of these, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's statements can be rightly referred to. Rahul Gandhi should peep into the pages of history to know the blunders committed by his great-grandfather Jawaharlal Nehru, who happened to be the first Prime Minister of India. During the Nehruvian rule, China occupied 43,000 square kilometers of land in Aksa Chin and Ladakh after the 1962 war. Of this, China had seized 38,000 square kilometers in the 1962 war, and about 5,000 square kilometers of land was handed over to it by Pakistan. The 43,000 square kilometers of land can house country like Denmark, Netherlands, or Switzerland. Because of Prime Minister of Jawaharlal Nehru's folly, Pakistan managed to occupy over 85,000 square kilometers of land in Kashmir. This includes the territory of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. These facts show that more than 1.28 lakh square kilometers of land had gone to China and Pakistan when Pandit Nehru was the Prime Minister. The area is almost equal to the size of Bangladesh, and there are about 90 countries in the world which are smaller than this tract. The failure of India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to assist China is the reason behind Sino-India border dispute. China first occupied Tibet and then strategized to take the possession of Aksa Chin. Nehru is alleged to have committed several other mistakes while China continued to strengthen its military might. In 1952, the Kalvat Singh Committee had warned the then Indian government about the Chinese buildup, but this went unheard. Nehru's biggest mistake is stated to be that he did not allow Indian Air Force to participate in the 1962 war, otherwise the consequence of that failure would have been different. China's psychological warfare, however, has now failed in front of India. Chinese army fought a war 41 years ago in 1979, and had suffered defeat at the hands of Vietnam. Currently, there is hardly any officer in the Chinese army who would have the experience of that war. On the contrary, Indian Army had defeated Pakistan badly in Kargil War nearly 21 years ago. The Indian Army also has the experience of penetrating into the enemy's territory. The examples can be seen in the surgical strikes and air strikes against Pakistan. Notably, India-China border dispute covers the 3,488 km long LAC. China claims Arunachal Pradesh as part of southern Tibet while India opposes it.
Yeah.